This content is brought to you by Fisher Improvement Technologies Online, a learning platform that includes self-paced courses, knowledge sharing, and networking opportunities for safety, quality, and performance improvement professionals. Join now for free at online.improvewithfit.com.
This show is brought to you by Safety FM.
Over 25 years helping leaders reducing errors and incidents. Here is your host of the Essential Leadership Cycle podcast, Rob Fisher.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another round of the Essential Leadership Cycle podcast. I'm your host and intentional leader, Rob Fisher. And with us today, we've got a real amazing set of talents. Lynn, Kachmarik, and Garrick Jones. And Garrick Jones, I don't know how I screwed that up. Should I do that again?
Yeah,
oh, no, you're good.
Angry with yourself.
Yeah. Well, at least you're started off with some humor.
You got my name right.
Yeah,
I know, right?
Which was the one I was worried about. So I've known Lynn for some time, several years now. She's actually visited us here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I haven't had the opportunity to in-person meet Garrick, but everybody around me has. So if you guys will just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do, and then I want to talk a little bit about why I thought it was great to have you guys on the show today. So Lynn, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're representing, especially with Equilibrium Sport.
Yeah, thank you very much, and we're excited to be here. I am the president of Equilibrium Sports and Education. We merged them together recently. And, it's a program, as you know, you're very experienced with Equilibria, but, I played on the United States Women's National Water Polo team for 10 years. I coached the national team. I coached 20 years at Division I, men and women's water polo and swimming, collegiate athletic director. And I got to tell you, when I came to my first leadership retreat, I didn't want to be there. I thought it was similar to other things, yet I found what I spent my entire life looking for. So really, really excited. And through that journey, I got to meet Garrick, and I followed him around like a little puppy one day because he probably didn't even realize it. But when I met him, I thought, I want to know this man. I want to work with this man. So it's a great privilege that I'm on here with Garrick.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Garrick. Now that you've been duly humbled by Lynn.
I know. I appreciate that, Lynn. Mr. Fisher, I appreciate you giving us this platform today. My name is Garrick Jones. I am a former NFL player, former CFL player. I am the president of the Huddle Up Foundation of Houston, in which that is a nonprofit comprised of all former NFL, CFL players. It's about 1,500 or so members that I'm over. I am the commissioner and co-founder of the State's Developmental Football League, which is a developmental program that teaches financial literacy, business, just the acumen of life, and looking at, generating generational wealth, as well as when I found out about the E-Colors program and Equilibrium Sports, I wanted to incorporate that into the learning aspect of what we did in our league. Because when I played, everybody was coached the same way. And I knew that, that didn't work. Guys were operating around 40 to 60%. And I thought, this could be something that could change the game. And since, I got a chance to learn about the program, I've been trying to install this in everything that I touch. And right now I'm presently in a position where I'm trying to be a candidate for general manager in the NFL now. So I want to take this program inside of the league and just change the dynamic of how, communication and everything else goes on in the NFL. So that's kind of my story right now. I think we'll kind of get into a few more things. It's a few more nuggets there, but I just want to let everybody know that I'm very appreciative of this opportunity to be here today.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Garrick. Let me just ask a kind of out of the blue question for the two of you. I think Lynn knows a little bit of my history. I was a Division I athlete as well, and played on some national teams. But how much talent do you think that we have lost or wasted because we coached everybody the same? I mean, do you guys think that we really have stranded some talent out there that could have changed the sports?
Well, from a youth perspective, it's almost 75% of kids quit sports by the time they're 13. Obviously, some find other passions, but many of those, the research tells us, ineffective coaching, pressure from parents, being bullied by teammates. And nobody knows what anyone's potential is at the age of 13. I didn't even start playing water polo. I didn't even know there was a water polo ball till I was a senior in high school. Yet 2 years later, I was on a national team. From my experience, and I share this very honestly, we were the best team in the world for a 4-year period of time, right? Those are the kind of commitments that you make. And we were going to world championships. We were the number one team, and we didn't win. And why did we not win when we were the most talented? We didn't understand each other. We had very ineffective communication. We didn't trust each other. All those things that I found when I started this journey with Equilibria. So absolutely. And myself is included in that.
Yeah, I mean, I include myself in that, Garrett.
Oh, yeah. No. Just to segue off what Lynn said, when I was coming up and as I got older, we understood that the talent was walking the halls. There was always somebody better than the guys that made it.
And we talked openly about it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the situation that you understand. And I tell people all the time, I'm a part of the 1% of the athletes that made it to the NFL, and that's across the world. But there were guys that were 100 times better than I was. But unfortunately, there was a disconnect. And when you have a disconnect, you lose a lot of the talent that's there. You lose a lot of the momentum that can be there. You lose a lot of the aspects of growth. And it's unfortunate, but that's a part of the mission right now, is to change that dynamic, starting with the youngsters and work our way up. But it can definitely happen. I mean, it's just all about exposure. And once you get the exposure to it, now it's about education. And then that's when the real movement happens.
And we talk a lot about the first element of the essential leadership cycle being self and team awareness. A lot of times we draw the circles equal, but how important is that one in the grand scheme of things?
Wow.
Huge.
Game changer. I mean, I'm an older woman. I'm not old, just an older woman. And I was in my late 50s, right? I know you're thinking, oh my gosh, Lynn, of course you have to be in your 40s. When I was in my late 50s, when I was exposed to e-colors, Equilibria, self and team awareness. And, at that point, I've been through so many pieces of my career. I'm a mom of 3, been married for 3 years. And when I sat in that self and team awareness workshop, shortly into it, I just had so many aha moments of, again, it gave me a simple framework for things that I knew about myself and others, but didn't know how to move through that to effectively, reach my own potential, let alone the potential helping the hundreds and hundreds of athletes and coaches that I've been so privileged to lead over my journey.
Well,
so
it's one thing to be aware of it. It's another thing to have the tools, right, to deal with it. So you've got to be aware of and manage. Those are 2 elements. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, Garrick, jump in here.
Oh, that's correct. And that's kind of the same situation and scenario for myself. I was done with my career, and I had started my league, and my league was developed in order to develop the excuse me, the whole person, not only just the whole person as an athlete, but the whole person off the field, and then their families and everybody that came through the door, which means the fans. So when I started getting into it and just, attending some of the seminars and some of the workshops and the in-person things, it was something that really woke me up. And I said, this is something that has to be implemented in sports and at the highest level, because if you can get to the highest level, everybody else will follow. and that's kind of my situation in regards to just trying to incorporate this in team efficiency, and also waking up the dynamic of intentional communication within the building. Because if I know what you need, or if I have a base to know what you need, it just streamlines and fast tracks our communication, and it helps us as an organization.
Yeah. So for each of you, would you mind sharing one of your biggest personal self-awareness revelations through this journey that you really just started?
Yeah. Rob, it just is in my head all the time now. I was captain of the national team 8 of 10 years. I was captain of 2 collegiate teams, captain of 2 high school teams. I led the cheers. I fired up people. I held people accountable. I this, I that. And I now realize, I can't even realize how many of my teammates must have been saying under their breath, just shut up, Lynn. And I don't say that in a mean way. I say that in a way that I've come to realize I took away a leadership opportunity for so many great potential leaders, right? I just stepped in instead of pausing a little bit and letting others find their voice.
So what are your e-colors, Lynn, and how does that play in?
So my e-colors are yellow over red, but not just yellow over red, because as you know, what's important is your percentages.
Right.
So I am about 45% yellow. I am, which is that socializer part of my personality. And then almost 30% red, which is that get it done. Way down, about 16% is my blue, and very sadly only 7% green. So I have spent my life jumping in with both feet and then thinking about the consequences later. And there have been consequences, and one of those consequences is taking away leadership opportunities from others.
Yeah, very good, Garrick. How about you? What's one of the biggest self-awareness things you've taken away on your journey?
I'm a lot like Lynn. I'm yellow over red as well, and we're kind of on par when it comes to percentages. But for myself, being a part of teams in regards to football and being on the offensive line, you have a number of guys that are working together for one goal. So for me, one of the things that I really realized is, I could be a vocal leader or I could be a physical leader. My thing is I tend to lead from the front, and I'm a firm believer and have been a firm believer in being able to show people how to do things, just from basic instructions and those types of things. But that's how I was taught. But as I've gone through the programs and as I've thought about things, my job now is to be a transformational leader, and not only show you how to do things, but put you in a position where you can win. And then you can turn around and in turn teach the other person. And that's really what this thing has been about for myself. And I just took a lot of the principles from football and trying to figure out how to bring forth more leaders. Yeah. And that's really been my MO. That's my mode of operation right now, just trying to birth more leaders through what we have going on. But, the football principles, man, they have been tried and true. And I have been very vocal, and I'm starting to be more vocal. And that's why I raised my hand to be a candidate, to be a GM in the NFL, preferably with the Houston Texans. But hey, there's other teams out there.
Throw a little plug in there.
Yeah, a little plug. But I am more extroverted with it now.
Yeah. And
that's one of the things that has come about from me just learning, what my colors are and what my dynamic and what I bring to the table.
Yeah. When I play football, I used to say football is a team sport until you jump off sides.
Oh man, who you telling? You by yourself then?
That's right. Who? Well, but
right, exactly.
If I could just share that as well, because I don't think I've talked about this much on the podcast. My e-colors are yellow over blue, but Lynn, you said something extremely important. I am 26, 24, 26, 24 in percentages. Wow. So people would always ask, I've got a nuclear background, went through nuclear power school, nuclear engineering. People would always say, well, how does the top e-color yellow over blue make it through those hard sciences? And I think that percentage piece really comes into play because it's really easy for me to tap into that that e-color red. It's really easy for me to tap into that e-color green because they're so close together. And I think that realization that the percentages matter in how we need to help manage ourselves, I think that's a huge deal for self and team awareness. Because if you don't get past that, sharing your vision and values or trying to get across that we all want the same thing. Lynn, I love what you said. I have no idea how many people I turned off by me being so exuberant. I'm kind of putting words in your mouth, but they may not have come along with you. So you never really got to that shared vision and values, but everybody knew what Lynn's was. And there's probably a lot of leaders out there that are like that.
Yeah. Whether, depending on, again, that comes from my yellow red, but somebody else is a leader with the green blue. And so something else is holding them back or green red. So you're absolutely right. And again, I have such a little, so my difference with you is, I have 7% green. So that thinking, that planning, that organizing, I just didn't know how to tap into that. So I always found, I look back on every assistant that I've been so privileged to have. And fortunately, they're all alive and they've taken this PDI. And of course, they're, blue or green. And but what I did back in those days was I used to say, she or he, they're the calm before the storm, right? Instead of me understanding the tools that, e-colors and Equilibria has given to me, where I would learn how to become more calm and more organized. And I would help who I am mentoring to become more social and more red. So neither of us, I didn't reach my potential and I held others back. As a pretty darn good leader, I held others back from reaching their potential.
Well, and I think that we've kind of coined that as intentional leadership now. We really have to manage those tendencies and understand what we're good at and where we may have some potential limiters, and do that with some intentionality. We communicate with intentionality. We lead with intentionality. Garrick, I mean, is that really part of your progress on being able to bring this to a bigger stage?
Oh, absolutely. You have to know what you don't know, and you have to surround yourself with people who complement you. And that's been my thing. Finding people who sharpen me and finding people who hit all the colors. Yeah. That way, I'm finding new and different ways to look at things, especially with people who are as established as I am and people who have been in the game longer than I have. When it comes down to football operations, when it comes down to management, business consulting, all those different things, I find myself, seeking out people, and I find myself, asking them to take the PDI before we even really talk.
Right.
So I can see, what their colors are. And then from there, we begin talking about football and football operations. And we begin talking about all the different things of business, because I want to add all of those people to my team. I want a diverse group that not only are diverse, when it comes down to ethnicity, but also a diverse group when it comes down to, their colors, their e-colors, what makes them tick, what makes them them. That way we can have a team that gives a diverse outlook on everything, because no stone needs to be unturned when it comes down to building teams and building championship mentalities and mindsets.
I mean, that's a great segue, because, we've been saying for a while that diversity is a fact. It's a condition, but inclusion is an action. And inclusion is a choice. It's something that we choose to do. And I love what you guys are doing. Can you just explain a little bit about what you guys are doing most recently? Because I think it's fascinating.
Well, as I said, I walked around like a little puppy when I first met this man, and I didn't know where it would lead us. I just knew I needed to know him, and so before the last 8 months have even happened, this has been something that's been driving me. And for me, a few years ago, when I attended my first diversity and inclusion webinar through the lens of e-colors, I was just blown away blown away. And so Garrick and I, started talking with our CEO, Lewis, who could be that team. And so we came together and just thought, all right, let's just dive into this. We've been doing free webinars. I don't even know how many we've done now. Our last one, we've elevated it to a new level. We added the self and team awareness workshop. As you know, with the cycle, we have those 3 driving elements. And then you get to trust, then you get to diversity and inclusion. And so we've had to jump through and jump past some really important essentials so that we can create this safe pathway for people who are just joining us. And I think between the people that Garrick from his world and Lynn from her world have been able to bring together, for some reason, we've been able to create some magic and create that safe, magical space over time for people to really open up. And I'll tell you, I can't believe my own personal growth over these opportunities. And I think the biggest compliment that I've heard, and it really has come from the non-dominant culture in the room, whatever it might be, is this is the first time in my life I feel like I've done diversity and inclusion work, and it hasn't felt like I've checked off a box.
So, and Garrick, I want to pass this off to you, but I want to hear everything you have to say about this as well. How important, we kind of operate in really 2.5 or 3 different worlds.
Right.
Lynn's got kind of her world, and Garrick's got his world, and then Rob's got this business world over here. How important do you think it is for business leaders to experience some of the things you guys are seeing in your diversity? It's the diversity and inclusion webinar, right?
Yes.
In this diversity and inclusion webinar, how important is it for leaders in the business world to experience this? And just tell us a little bit more about it, Garrick.
Well, I think it's paramount, and it should be a priority, because as business leaders and CEOs and billion-dollar acquisitions experts and procurement specialists and any other title that you want to give them, you tend to lose touch with reality. And this is a bridge. This bridges the gap between so many different people, so many different outlooks. And it forces you to really be open and honest with yourself in regards to your biases, the way you were raised, the way you are in business, how you should look at things, and in order to make sure that not only you are good, but everybody around you is good. And that's one of the things that really drives me in my practices in business and business consulting, and the different things that I do on a daily basis, is because this is needed, especially in this day and age. This is very much needed, because this itself, I believe, can be the conduit to a world of change. And it's all about talking, all about communicating, and all about really just slowing down and really thinking about it and using a common sense model, in which we all know common sense nowadays isn't so common. But it really gives the CEOs and the owners the opportunity to just get away from the reality that they're in and begin to learn again. And you should never be afraid to reset your thought process in order to, come back bigger and stronger. And that's one of the things that I love about the programs and how it fits in any space.
So that was going to be what question I was going to ask about. How transportable do you think what you're doing is into industry? First question, I'm going to ask a 2-parter. And the second one is, do you think that D&I, diversity and inclusion, by its very nature, scares some people?
You want to get the first one, Lynn?
Let me jump into that, because I just had this, as a yellow red, I miss, contact. So I just had an in-person, socially distant session in Atlanta. And I had a CEO of a company in the room for diversity and inclusion. And Rob, one of the questions that we have elevated our presentation to is, after they learn about diversity and inclusion, after they understand e-colors, we ask them, you are the non-dominant culture, and it's your first day at a new business, in a new job, or on a team. And how do you want them to welcome you? How do you want them to recognize you? What do you need to be successful? And the CEO, who I just happened to move by her table, and she said very clearly, I would want this, I would want this, I would want this, I would want this. And she took a pause, and I said, do you do that for your new employees? And she just looked at me and she said, never. And I said, why not? And she said, I don't have time. And I said, think about that. And she was just blown away.
Right.
Blown away. So, Garrick, you take the second half there.
Well, I think, and well, I know change is scary. Change is hard for a lot of people, but for us to make the strides that we need to make, you have to be uncomfortable. And an analogy that I always use, and I'll use it to the day that I die, if we are in a gym and you are working out and you're not uncomfortable, you're getting nothing done and you're in the way. And I need that machine. Everybody else needs that machine so we can get the gains that we need. And it's as simple as that. You know, the diversity and inclusion is a scary thing, but just like I say, diversity and inclusion could be the difference between winning and losing. And if you are really looking at that bottom line, you want it as diverse as possible, because there are a lot of people who understand business. There are a lot of people who understand their people. So in order to facilitate that bottom line being good forever, it behooves you to look at it and really understand it. And once you take a look and really understand it, it changes your mind and changes your mindset. It really opens you up to growth and development within yourself.
And one of the things I love about what you guys are doing is that very often on the check the box, there's 3 types of diversity that companies pay attention to. And depending on their belief system, those 3 types, racial, gender, and religious diversity, just to name the 3 big dogs, right?
Right.
But when you add personality diversity in, what you're really doing is crossing all of those lines because you're opening up avenues to communicate with people and engage with people across all of those elements. So it's not like you have a piece of pie and it's split up into those 3 elements. You now have a nice, pumpkin pie that has all the elements blended together. Can you guys talk a little bit about how important it is for personality diversity within the diversity and inclusion spectrum?
Yeah, I think that last night, this last session that we did, it was a 3-part series. And it was the first time that we put in an entire self and team awareness session. And I don't know about you, Garrick, we haven't had it. We were, by the time it was over, because we stay on these, people don't want to get off. Right, I mean, it's another hour that, the 2 of us are on learning from other people. But I just was blown away at the next level of understanding that we were able to get to. As a matter of fact, Rob, I believe your son, Justin, has added so much because of his expertise and his knowledge in the e-colors. He was really able to, and he's green-blue, which is right. Opposite, very different from Garrick and I. And so he has found his voice. And so the perspective in diversity and inclusion that he was able to bring each session from an e-color perspective just allowed so many other people to jump in because, oh my gosh, he's green-blue. I'm going to now raise my voice. So I don't know about you, Garrick, but I didn't get to sleep till 1:30 because it wasn't my voice that people were hearing. Right. We created that pathway for not only non-dominant cultures in the Zoom room to speak, but every e-color was comfortable last night.
Right. And that right there speaks volumes. Everybody had a voice. And that was really cool to see Justin, to see Ashton, people who would normally sit back and just watch everything unfold, they begin to take control of certain instances and certain spectrums of that space, which was really good. And the aha moment I had last night, and I talked about it, was Ashton, the young lady that was in my group. She basically said, we need to find answers instead of assumptions. And she's very quiet and reserved, and that shut the entire room down, because you had a room full of yellow reds. And we were like, okay, right. So we were able to find that commonality, and that's really what this thing is about. So when you talk about personality, being able to find that commonality and then build from there, that fast tracks everything, because you understand exactly who the people are and your personnel. That's one of the biggest things in professional sports. Know your personnel. And nobody really knows anybody.
Yeah.
But they preach that. And it's like, you know what? Every movement needs a sacrificial lamb. So if I'm him, I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to take it to the NFL. I'm going to take it to MLB, NBA, and all these different factions and say, hey, listen, this is what you preach, but do you really know your personnel? And if you don't, here it is. This is it. Let's make it happen.
Or are you developing more use?
Yes. And Rob, one of the things that I have found in all my years of working with teams and at every level and businesses is so often we don't create that pathway for our men to be vulnerable. We think, we have to, pound the chest and keep going. And I will tell you, the biggest impact of my work has been with collegiate men, professional male athletes, and high school men, because of the vulnerability pathways that we create in these workshops. And, that's right, Garrick. I mean, that was a big question last night. And that's the beauty of this, is that we are giving vulnerability power. We're giving vulnerability power, which, as both of you know, if you can't be vulnerable as a leader, you are suppressing your culture, and you're not really that leader that you want to be. So that's the beauty of what we're doing in all of our work.
Well, I mean, I love the way you just said that, because we often talk in industry about being a learning organization, and that leader response to failure matters. But if you react to failure poorly, then that's really an indication that you're not vulnerable as a leader at all. And so understanding how you can manage those vulnerabilities and making it a safe space for vulnerability actually lets you respond to success and failure better as a leader.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Because everything isn't going to be, peaches and roses. You have to be able to understand failure and success, and then measure your responses to both of those.
One of the factors that we introduced last night for the first time is the power of psychological safety, right? Psychological safety. Lots of research out there about what is that one factor in creating, high performance. And so one of the things is I had the 8 essential cycle up, and I said, where does psychological safety fit in here? So we all agree that psychological safety is huge. Where does it fit in? And where it fits in is each and every aspect.
I was going to say yes.
Right? Every single aspect, every single essential is what develops psychological safety. So it just was beautiful.
Yeah, we actually say in our senior leader workshops, look, you can't just go out and create psychological safety. What the Essential Leadership Cycle does is it enables the elements that then result in psychological safety. It's like a safety culture. You don't go out and say, okay, now we've got a safety culture. That is created. And we also say, look, as a leader, if you follow a process, your people will follow processes. If you follow models, your people will follow models. If you don't, they're left on their own. So don't expect them to do what you want them to do if you don't have a model to follow. Don't expect them to follow processes and procedures if you're not willing to do that as a leader. That's a modeled behavior. And I love what you say, that yes, every element of the Essential Leadership Cycle develops those elements of psychological safety, as opposed to psychological safety being an end goal. It's a process that each of those elements has a part of.
I definitely agree with you. I believe that model behavior and psychological safety is a part of the foundation, of building your house.
Yeah.
And then you go to framing, you go to electrical, plumbing, all those different facets of it, but it has to be ingrained in your foundation, and being able to lead from the front with boots on the ground, and show people, that you are vulnerable, even though you've been successful in so many different capacities of your life, but you get the opportunity to teach from testimony, things that I talk about all the time, whether it be failed relationships, divorces, bankruptcies, foreclosures. I've been through them all. So I'm able to use that as my lesson plan when I talk to my athletes and the people that are around me, because that's the commonality and the common ground, because they've seen it, they've been around it, they felt it. But it's all about the mindset and your perspective and how you bounce back, and being able to try to implement as many different things as possible to never go back to those situations ever again, but also elevate yourself and create your standard. And that's what this thing is about.
Well, I mean, that's developing individual and organizational resilience, right? So
Absolutely.
we have to be able to, we have to have some of that flexibility, and vulnerability is a big piece of that. I will tell you too that Justin has just raved about the about the sessions, and I tried to stay out just because I wanted him to. He said he was going to be in them, and I wanted him to be able to experience that without his old man and around. But he's really. To give him some props, he has really become a student of the game. One of the things he does is if he emotionally latches onto something, if he believes in something, he becomes a real student of the game. So I super appreciate you guys acknowledging that.
Hey, Gus, go ahead.
Vulnerable questions, right? He asked questions that others in the room wanted to ask, but they weren't comfortable because they might have been perceived as being racist or biased, and he just put it out there. And I was just like, I had that same question, and I'm leading this session, and Garrick and I don't claim to be experts. We're on this journey with everyone, right? This is a journey. This is a process. And I have grown so much from each and every one of these sessions, including I was so excited for Justin. One, he made sure I was recording each and every session. I pulled on his strengths because I typically start and think, oh my gosh, go back and put on the recording. And every time Justin would start, Lynn, put the recording on. Woo!
Yeah. Well, this podcast isn't what it is unless Justin does his magic with it after the fact. So, again, props to him. Listen, I so thank you guys for coming on. Is there something you guys think I should have asked you about that I didn't, or something you want to talk about that we didn't already talk about?
I think you did great, man. I mean, the aspects of what we're doing, it's game changing, it's trailblazing. So there'll be a lot of room for, different questions as we go further and further into it, because it'll always be a situation of, oh, I could have asked that, or I could have thought about this, and those types of things. But I think the more we get the word out, the more we're intentional and consistent with doing what we're doing, the more people will gravitate to this, because we're talking about over 300 people. Each one of those 300 people have 5 people in their direct lines of communication each and every day. Then you look at the social media aspect, each one of those 500 have at least 1,000 people that follow them. So if we do this thing organically, before we know it, this thing will be viral. And that's what it's all about.
And one of the things that I too want to share is that because we bring people together from around the world that for the most part don't know each other, it also makes a really safe place. So think about diversity and inclusion work with your CEO, your vice president, you're in the room. Sometimes, especially if you haven't done the work with the 8 essentials, creating those driving elements so that people truly do feel safe, in that room to share their perspective, that's why it feels like you're checking off a box. And so I'd love for you to share this with, it doesn't matter if you're the president of the world, if you're, we had a lot of athletes, collegiate 18-year-old youth on this call with some CEOs. This is a safe space for people to come to say, I want this to come to my team. I want this to come to my business. I want this to come to my museum staff. So that's why I think people should join us from all walks of life.
So let me get this straight. You guys have diversity and inclusion in your diversity and inclusion workshops?
Right.
I think that's why people think they're checking a box in these organizations, because I've sat around in some of them and I look around the room and I think, okay, which one of us is going to talk about diversity and inclusion?
Right.
That's the key.
I think that would be fascinating. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on. Can you tell everybody how to get a hold of you and when your next set of webinars is? Maybe if they're not scheduled, that's fine. Just tell us how to get a hold of you.
Well, we're on social media, but you can, for me, it's very simply just go to Equilibria and Sports website. My contact information is there. Easy. We're promoting it through that. We don't have the dates for the next one, but there will be a next one. And okay. So that's easily. So Lynn.Kachmarik at equilibria.com. Garrick?
Yeah, I'm very easy to find. I just tell people to search me out on any search engine that you're comfortable with. You can just put my name in, Garrick Jones, and just put NFL next to it, and everything that I'm doing will pop up. Or I just tell them to search out the hashtag GJ4GM, and that'll take you to petitions. That'll take you to all the things I have going on, the Huddle Up Foundation of Houston. I mean, the Global Fan Exchange. You name it, everything will pop up, and I'm easy to find. I'm very accessible, so just search me out, guys.
Yeah, go sign that petition for DJ4GM. Let's get Garrick a GM position. Well, thank you guys very much. I know the listeners are going to really glom onto this, and we're going to drive some folks your way to help with their journey. So thanks for listening today. I've been your host and intentional leader, Rob Fisher, and remember, intentional leadership starts with you.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.